Hey everybody. Today I feel like this episode should require a parental advisory because I got an AM1 playing in the buff. That's right, today I'm here at Buffumville Disc Golf Course. And this is a long bomber course. It is a wide open place with lots of long fairways. It's a very fair course, but definitely bring your big arm and some sunscreen because you will be out in the heat. This stuff I'm standing next to right here is called riprap. You'll see it an awful lot in this video. This course, unlike when I was playing at West Thompson Lake, which is also a dam course, this course is built right around the dam. There are places where you're throwing over the dam and around it. Anytime you see this riprap, it's OB. I think you'll enjoy seeing this course. This is one of the ones that kind of inspired me to do this channel. One of the videos that I first appeared in was with Noah on Daily Disc Golf. He brought me out here along with Jake. First time I'd ever played with Jake. The two guys there, they made this course look easy. And I'm going to change that opinion real quick. This is a tough course. And I think it's interesting to see an amateur's perspective on it. So, here we go. Enjoy. Okay, I'm at the disc golf kiosk and I want to talk to you for a second about the map. This course can get a little bit confusing. It's the first time you've ever played it because there's actually two separate courses going on here. There's an old layout and then there's the newer one. Most people come here to play the newer one. It's the longer layout, it's the more competitive layout. The short layout is, quite frankly, really short. And it's good for rec players and beginners, but I think most of the people that will be watching this channel are going to be more interested in big buff. So, we're starting off here, X marks the spot, and we're playing the red or orange lines that you see. So they're much longer lines and it takes us all along the back side of the dam, along the water and all the way down, and then brings us slowly back to the start. So you may see alternate baskets, you may see alternate tee pads. The numbering on these can get a little bit confusing because they label them as, you know, like 1A, 9A, 7A, things like that. Just stay with the simple numbers and you should be fine. That's about it. Yeah, let's go. Okay, hole 1, 630 feet, 5-foot elevation change to par 4. We're playing to the A position, which is the long layout. Like I said, they have multiple layouts here. They can get a little confusing because they do mix and match some of the two courses that are available. But things to watch out for this one. It's a long bomb, but there are some wires in the way that support the telephone poles running along the road. You also have the road itself, which is considered OB, and the riprap on the left-hand side. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward power drive to the basket in the far end in the trees. All right, if the pad I'm standing on looks enormous, that's because it is. This one actually goes in both directions. We've got one of the short tees going in that direction. Hole 1 ends up this way. That's where I'm headed. Should be safe. Okay, so took it easy with the first drive and through a mid-range. I landed right behind one of those telephone cables that I was talking about before. It's holding up the pole. It doesn't really hurt my shot, but if I were a couple of feet to the one side or the other, it might be a problem for me. I should be able to get past the second one with no issue whatsoever from here. Oh, too low. All right, so this is going to be difficult to see, but the basket is about 30 feet beyond that pine tree that's right in front of us. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. You can just barely see the top of it up above the ridge of the hill I'm on the bottom of. Oh no! Hole 2 is another one that goes straight ahead, almost 600 feet, slight elevation change. The tricky part about this one is much narrower than the last fairway. You don't have any guide wires or any, cables or anything like that to worry about, but there's a tree about halfway up the fairway that leans out and makes you you have to flirt with it a bit. Otherwise, you could end up very much in the riprap. All right, so here we have a look at the actual hole. We're going to be playing almost to the road you can see in the distance. One other thing I wanted to point out is you'll notice that right here we have a gravel and fly pad tee box, whereas we were on concrete before. You'll see a mixture of different surfaces while you're playing here. Things are under development, nothing wrong with that. So that shot went fairly well. I'm just gonna pick up the same disc and throw it again. Oh, fade. Oh. Okay, hole 3, 450 feet with a 23-foot drop in elevation. Par 3, tricky one. Third tee pad, third different surface, this time tarmac or macadam, whatever you want to call it. Again, that's not a problem, but I do wish they had brooms out here because number 2 is pretty dirty. Perfect. All right, there's something I want to point out to you at this point in the round. That's the third time, either off the tee or off of a fairway drive, I've thrown my T-bird. It's not because the T-bird is the perfect disc for this. In fact, I'm sure there's 100 different discs you could use on this. But what you want to use is a disc that is comfortable and consistent for you on these shots. You can't necessarily go for max distance unless you're really good at that sort of thing. So as an AM player, you want to go with whatever your comfort driver is, something you know you can place in exactly the right spot. For me, that happens to be a T-bird. Whatever it is in your bag, you just want to avoid the riprap in the OB or the woods because it's super dense. Looking at my next shot, we have to go to the camera's right, okay, around these trees. You can't see it from the pad, you can't even see it from where I'm standing. So what I recommend is once you're out in the fairway, take a walk, go take a look at where you're headed, and then make your shot. Yeah. Well, I turned that over quite a bit. All right, there's a bit of a walk through the woods to get to hole 4. It's not long, and there's actually a nice little sign by the basket that you can even see from the fairway, which may help you find the basket. And it takes you into this short, narrow hole. Hole 4, 300 feet or so with a 13-foot elevation decrease. But this is a tunnel shot that is much tighter than the sign suggests, leading you out into an open field. Pretty fair, pretty standard par 3. Oh, I made it out. More of a layout. It's a very important disc for me, the West Side Bard. I mentioned reliable discs, and mine tend to be those that go out straight and then fade at the end. This is my mid-range version of a T-bird. It's a hole 5, is another 300 feet, par 3, slight decrease in elevation. Again, it is much tighter than the sign here would suggest. It's a very tight tee shot into a field, but then the basket is hidden by a small hillock and another group of trees. I'll give you a look at that in a second. It's really hard to see the basket here, but I'll see if we can zoom in. It is right down there between those trees and just behind that hill. Okay, so a couple different ways you can throw this hole. If I'm a right-hander with a flick, I might go left side gap here. With the backhand, I like to go straight at it, but there's a couple different ways you can do this. A lefty, again, left-hand lane or straight at it, you've got options. I think the lefty probably has the advantage here with a turnover shot that comes back in near the basket, but it's a really tight line, tough to do. So I threw my beat-in harp on that one, expecting it to fade at the end, and instead it went straight through and into the trees, and I'm on that little hill on the left-hand side. I'm in one of those little clusters of weeds. I don't know, maybe 60, 80 feet, 60, 70 feet to the basket from where I am, just over the backside of this hill. And you can see the basket way off on the left edge of the screen, I think. We'll see how this goes. Long enough. Hole 6, only 200 feet, but we're in some tight woods on this one. It's pretty well cleared out. There's not a lot of brush or anything like that in your way, but a lot of little tiny saplings on this hill. If you watch Daily Disc Golf, you may remember Noah's first time here with me. He had a shot that almost went in, and oh, he was so sad it did not. Would have been his first ace on camera. Once again, it's really hard to see the basket. I'll try to zoom in. It is right below the crest of that hill in the dark. Not a great throw, but the result's not horrible. So I'm placing the camera back a little bit here so you can get a good look at the hole. Again, there's the basket, and you can see where I landed. No. That's it. Thank God. Literally inches from a horrific rollaway down the slope. Okay, the last hole definitely favors a right-hand backhand because it's a natural pump straight ahead with a fade just a little bit uphill. This hole is probably a different story. This one favors the lefty turnover shot or the right-hander flick. The problem is this line represents the riprap, and that frankly is much closer to the fairway than it looks from the tee shot. So you have to be really careful with the shot off the tee as a right-hand backhander that you don't fade out and land in it. Again, I kind of wish we had a broom here. Ooh, I don't know. I hit something at the end. I hope it's not the riprap. I'm hoping it was just a stump or something in the middle of the fairway. I just have a bad feeling about this, so I'm walking the flight path of the disc to see if we can figure out what happened there. I can see the riprap poking out, and that looks quite a distance away, but that kick at the very end of my throw could have been bad news. All right, there we are, I'm safe. Okay, so you can see a small pine and a thicker oak next to it. The basket I'm throwing for is down just to the right of that big oak. This is a bit of a finesse shot because you don't want to have it rolled further down that hill. Well, that's short, but I should be safe. Okay, so the green is actually much more forgiving than I thought it was, and I was definitely not aggressive enough with that upshot. So now I've got a 25-30 footer for to save par. Ooh. Okay, hole 8 is a bit of a chip shot, 223 feet, straight ahead with a big bend to the camera's right-hand side. And what makes this one interesting is there's a couple trees around the green, but there is an exceptionally steep slope directly behind where the pin placement is that goes all the way down and into the water. And yes, I have found that in the past. So your drive, if you can park the basket or get up just short, you're fine. But if you have to make a long approach shot, it can be very tough to run this basket because of that hill. Oh. Safe. Just want to give you a look. What happens if you run that basket? You go down, 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 all around. Not much that will stop you. It will roll and bounce right off of those trees and keep going into the water. I promised you some long bombs on this episode, and this is one of them. Hole 9 is probably the signature hole for this course. It's 708 feet long, which is a good distance, but it's also got you throwing over riprap on the left and then water on the right, and it is really tight. It looks like there's places where you can play in bounds, but trust me, there is not. You have to make it 330 feet to get over the water and riprap to the grass on the other side. To make matters worse, there are bushes lining the water on the other side, which can make it so that, you know, it looks like you've got probably a 20-foot, 30-foot elevation change, but in order to get over those bushes, that really cuts a bit out of it. So it's probably only maybe a 10, 15-foot elevation drop to help you out. So for rec players, what I recommend, just pick up your putter and dump it into the riprap. There is a drop zone on the other side of the riprap and the water that'll get you safely over there. There are two things making me nervous about this hole right now. The first is there's a family that's picnicking out there and they have 2 young children. They're well out of my range. I'm never going to reach them and hit them. But if one of those kids just takes off while I'm lining up my shot and throwing, you never know what can happen. So that's making me nervous. I'm trying to keep an eye on them before I throw. The second thing is this Wraith is one of my favorite discs right now. I have just gotten it beaten in so that it turns up just a little bit before it starts to fade out. And this is a hole that is famous for people going in the water and losing discs on. Right now there's not a whole lot of wind, so I've got that going in my favor, but this is still just nerve-wracking. Nope. I was way too cautious and I ended up being in the riprap with that one. Didn't turn it over at all. Okay, so I'm down here at the base and I'm looking at the drop zone. Right there is a little pad to the right. Directly to the left of where that family is hanging out. I'll scoot over and see if I can pinch in. You can see the basket way in the distance, ever so slightly to the right of the bench or whatever it is that they're picnicking on. That's where we're headed. All right, so it's been 10 minutes since my last throw. I just told this guy that I was throwing and warned him and talked to 3 people as they were walking through and trying to get them out of my way. And once I had a clear opening, I took my shot. So I'm out there pretty good, but after all that, I forgot to turn the camera on again, so missed footage. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. That fairway drive was a great shot, but I had to play around the children and that gentleman. And so I'm about even with the basket, but I'm a good, I don't know, 70 feet up above it. Okay, hole 10, 412 feet with a 27-foot incline, but I don't think you'll notice the incline that much. It's very, very gradual. It goes all the way up there. Your drive is just, you know, it's technically you got to go up and over a hill and get into a spot in between the trees, but it's one of those shots that you want to keep low and tight on the hill anyway, so you're not really throwing uphill, you're kind of throwing level. It's tricky, you're throwing out over the water, but the water shouldn't come into play. It's pretty short. If you can throw 200 feet, you'll make it over no problem. Okay, here you can see I've got a long look up the fairway. I'm probably a little deep, a little too far to the right-hand side of the fairway. You know, not quite perfect, but the reason why being is I have some low-hanging pine branches overhead, so I'm going to keep this shot low and straight, try and hope and skip up to the basket. Damn, didn't get the turn that I wanted. Most of the navigation on this course is easy, but you have to backtrack from hole 10 and head down a little path here off to the side. I don't see a great deal of signage. It could be here and I just missed it. For the most part, this course is very well laid out and one hole leads to the next. There are only a few short paths that you need to take. If you're using U-disc or if you took a photograph of the map while you were at the kiosk, you should be fine. For hole 11, we are back in the woods for a little bit here. It's a tight line, probably definitely a right-hander's friendly one, right-hand backhand. You're gonna throw an Annie out there and then have it fade back into the rocks near the basket. I've had some really good throws on this hole, so it's kind of a favorite of mine. We'll see how I do today. Oh, did not turn that disc at all. This is less than ideal. Probably the best I could have hoped for on that shot. Okay, the sign for this hole makes it look like a very straightforward shot. It's not. We'll just have to take a look at the fairway. Okay, so if you see that big, thick tree dead ahead, at the very base of that tree and to the left of it, you can kind of see the basket. Pan back so you can see the hole a little better. We're teeing off from back here on the left, and it's a very tight corner around there, and there's really no way to cheat this hole. You have to throw a very tight technical shot up there if you're going to get the deuce. It's probably more likely to play this as a 3 and just, you know, be safe, get yourself out past the first set of trees, and then throw an upshot, doink, put yourself in. Here's a better look at the fairway and what we're dealing with. There's that same tree directly ahead of us. We got to get out and around that. I think a lefty flick could do this. A big Annie with a right-hand flick could do this as well. But as a backhander, this is really tough. Also, don't overrun the pad because it's a long way down for that last step. In fact, I think I'll throw this as a standstill. Yeah, that's about as well as I could have thrown that. So I'm coming up on my disc from the side here so that you can see this little valley or trench that we're in. And that's important because as you get out there, you can whip something up here and be pretty confident that the second half of this trench will stop you from skipping too far. The direction I actually came from though was that way. So I got lucky and I hit low and just settled right into the trench. Before I put this out, it's worth noting that there is a very steep drop off about 10 feet behind the basket. So this putt is not as easy as it looks on camera. Yay, first birdie. Hole 13, another short one. This is going to be the last one, I believe, that's in the woods before we get back out onto the open field by the dam. 265 feet. The trick to this one is that 22-foot elevation is the real deal. You're throwing uphill on this one. It's not incredibly steep like some of the ones at 501, but it's steep enough to make it an issue. So even though it's only 265, I'll usually throw a fairway driver here. This is a right-hand backhand friendly hole, although there are other ways you could throw it. You know, a lefty flick will get you there as well. There's a rock wall noted on the map there, that little angle that's on around the basket. That is not OB or anything like that. That's just a reference mark on the course. So here we go. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay, sorry. No worries.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay, sorry. No worries.
Oh, I did not hear that guy coming across. This is a guy jogging with his puppy, and that could have been a very bad situation. Right, there's the rock wall that I mentioned, and my disc and the basket. Let's see if we can get the disc and the basket together. No, go fade. Didn't hold straight long enough. One confusing bit of navigation here. There is a T sign right here for hole 14. We just played 13, but this is not the tee pad for the layout that I'm playing. We have to walk out into the field and go up onto the tarmac, just above that riprap, all the way in the back to find our tee shot. Okay, there's no T sign back here, but this is where you'll find the tee box. You can see it's painted on the tarmac right ahead of me. We are headed to the basket, which is in the distance. It is just, you see that line of pine trees extending from the left and going all the way to the center of the frame. It is just about dead center in the frame at the base of those pines and down. I'd say there's a good 20-foot elevation change here probably. I'm not sure. Let's see if we can zoom in on that. Yeah, right at the base of those pines and over the hill down to the bottom there. That's where we're headed. The riprap and the road are all OB, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Just big rip. This hole kind of looks like a runway. the left. Not bad. Oh, get stable. Got an old pin location right there. There's a bit of another backtrack in the navigation. You have to go backwards away from the hole, which is down there, and up over the riprap to that yellow sign, excuse me, white sign. But I find it safer to just avoid the riprap entirely. It's very loose and the footing is bad. You don't want to turn an ankle in the middle of the round. Just walk a few extra feet to go out and around. Besides, it's a great view, and it gives you a chance to take a look at where you're going. Our basket is on the other side of the sluice, right at the base of those stairs, just to the left of them. And we are headed back up here to that white sign. Hole 15, 470 feet with 16-foot drop. It's a par 3, but oh man, is this one a tricky one. There's a couple of fences in the way, and there's a couple different ways to play this hole, but this one is very, very much a placement drive shot with a second fairway drive to get you into the circle. Unless you can throw 500 feet, this one is not easy, and not an easy 3. Okay, so again, tricky one. I might actually throw 2 discs on this one just to show you a couple of the different options that are available here. What I have done in the past is I have thrown a putter and just tried to hit the grass. All the riprap again is out of bounds, but try to put it on the grass over there on the camera's left. And then take a second shot over that fence. And the fence can be tricky because it is just about this high, right at about disc height for me. And so it shouldn't be in the way. I should be able to clear it no problem, but it makes you nervous, especially if you're right up against it. So I want my shot to land a little bit back here. The other way to do this, what I see many people do, with right-handers especially, is they'll throw a flick with a really stable disc and just try and get it past that fence, over the fence up high, and then have it crash down onto the slope that's on the other side. That can result in good things depending on how well you hit that slope. You have a much shorter shot across the water and up to the basket. There's no obstacles in your way to speak of. I don't know what I'm going to do first. We'll see. No, that's not going to make it. All right, so I made it over the fence, but I did not make it far enough to the left. I didn't turn the disc enough, so I'm probably OB with that shot. My usual shot would be something more like this. And that's pretty much perfect. All right, so here I am at the Y for my putter. This is where my warden ended. And there is a tee box here. I don't recall whether this is a drop zone or not. I'm really not sure. I was told earlier, I ran into one of the locals and they told me that for the most part, when you're in the riprap, you just play last place that was in bounds as you would normally. The only 2 places where I know for certain there are drop zones are on hole 9, which I had to play from, and hole 16, I think it's 16, which I have not, or 16 or 17? 17, I think, which I have not yet gotten to, so hopefully I don't play from that one. I'm in a good position to get over this fence and get up to the green. Just got to smash something like I could throw my Saint to get the glide to get all the way over there, or maybe use my T-Bird. Yeah, that's the name of it. Woo! That was a good one. So, if I knew how to throw a flick, this is where I would want to land with it and take my second shot from somewhere in the grass here. Hole 16, 310 feet, 13-foot drop, par 3. This is a pretty simple one for a right-hander, just a big hyzer bomb. Not much to say about this one other than you're up on top of the dam at this point, and I do recommend that you take a look around because there's some very nice views from up here. Okay, so in this particular hole, the tee box is pointed almost directly at the basket. It is out around those pine trees and tucked in there in the corner. It's on the back side of that field. It's not that far. Like I said before, it's just a big hyzer bomb. Just be careful because there are other tee boxes, old ones that are marked in this position, that are pointed in different directions, so don't get confused. It is the newest looking paint that's on the ground, that's all. I actually thought I had a better drive than this. I'm just at circle's edge, I guess. There was a bit of a tailwind up there, so I get what I get. Shorted it. Hole 17, 390 feet with a 27-foot drop, and it's a par 3. This is the place where, again, you do have a drop zone at the AM pad on the other side there, and the water is obviously out of bounds. If you are familiar with it, there's an episode of Daily Disc Golf where I came out here with Noah and Jake, and I watched one of my favorite drivers drop about 60 feet from a gorgeous shot and just plummet straight into the water because of some kind of swirling winds or something. So wind is definitely a factor out here. It hasn't been bad today, but this hole always reminds me of that fact. Oh, it is a bit of a tailwind right now too. Shit, this makes me nervous. Okay, that's safe. Okay, so basket is just below that big tree in the distance to the left of that house across the street. Street is OB. My lie is directly under the tree here, near some weeds. Not a great lie, but it's not a long distance upshot. So aside from the slight elevation from my position, it should be fine. Okay, so as much as that hole does scare me, and it does make my knees knock a little bit, I think it's a very fair hole. The distance isn't so ridiculous that an amateur player like me can get across it. It's fine. There are even, somewhat safe ways you can play it like I did, staying to the left side so the distance is minimal. I was trying to turn that shot over and get it to glide a little more. Didn't work, but it was a good safe shot. All right, on to the last hole, 18. Okay, so as good as 17 is, 18 is a little boring. It's just 330 feet. It's a little bit uphill. It was a 13-foot elevation change with some trees on the side of the basket. The green can be a little tricky because it's on a small little mound, and there's a road beyond it that's OB, but it really shouldn't come into play unless you grip and rip your drive. know what's up with that disc not turning at all. Okay, so that was the round. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a couple of notes, final thoughts on this place. As I've mentioned several times, it is a course for guys with big arms. But don't let that scare you. If you're an AM1 or even an AM2, there are so many tricky shots here. Those guys with big arms will get themselves into trouble because a lot of the drives are placement drives. It's not so simple as grip and rip into a wide open space. You have to land your shot in a particularly good spot to stay away from the OB and things like that. So guys like my buddies Kevin and John, they will still have fun playing this course. What's more is there is a second course available here, if not to like 1.5 more courses, I think, depending on how you do the layouts. So there's multiple options. There are short, pin locations at most of the hole, short box locations, tee boxes at most of the holes. So you can shorten the course if you want to and still play big. Problems with it? Nothing really, other than the fact that some of the flow is a little bit wonky. You're in the trees for a while, then you're in the wide open shots. I'm very much a rhythm player, and that plays against my style of golf. I prefer to have things mixed up. If I'm playing, mid-ranges off the tee for 4 holes, and then all of a sudden I got to make the biggest drive of the game, that doesn't really work for me. The other thing that's a problem, there's a lot of dog walkers and families. That one that I encountered on hole 9 was not the only one. There are plenty of other people and things like that that use this course, use this park, and so you really have to be careful on some holes to avoid hitting people and to explain to people, hey, you're standing in the middle of a fairway. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. Okay, so last bit, I would say birdie scale. BS number for this course remains a 3. It's got good pads, it's got good baskets, it's got porta potty facilities. There's really no problems with it per se. It's got decent signage, where it's available. You got a good kiosk with a map you can take a picture of before you head out on the course. Some of the layouts, because of, like I said, there's multiple courses going on here, it can be a little bit confusing, but that's just a first time problem. You come back the second time, you'll have no issues whatsoever. As far as playability is concerned, I think it definitely deserves, a trip. This is worth a drive if you're an hour or 2 away. Definitely come out here and play this place. It's sufficiently different from many of the other New England courses in the fact that it has those big rip holes, the fact that it has water holes. There's a lot of unique shots on this place, so put it on your checklist. Until then, hope to see you on the course. AM1 for CAM1. Take care.